All right, what is up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Ronnie Asani Show. Today's episode is the inspirational Jeffrey Morgan. How are you, sir?
I am amazing.
Amazing. So, a bit about Jeffrey. A lot of you probably already know. Jeffrey is the creator of the lifestyle program, health and well-being consultant, high-performance coach. You're also a motivational speaker. Jeffrey has an inspirational story, and first time you came to the podcast, we kind of went through it, and so today I think we're going to cover a few different things than what we talked about last time.
Awesome.
But it's good to have you.
Thanks for having me, and always a pleasure to come in and talk to a champion doing champion things.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. What is up, everyone? This is Ronnie, your host of the Ronnie Asani Show. My number one goal in this show is to bring you some of the most amazing and accomplished individuals in the business world to share with you some real, raw, and authentic business insights. We sit down and talk in a casual setting, nothing too serious, yet we unpack some of the most incredible ideas, concepts, and best practices. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Oh, and don't forget to share the love. Like, share, and subscribe. Gracias, amigos. It is actually Saturday, and everyone is probably towards the end of the year, just going out.
Absolutely. On a
enjoying
boat.
themselves on a boat. What are we doing here? What are we doing here?
Each to their own, right? What makes you happy,
Exactly.
and probably something we'll probably discuss during the podcast, but finding your own happiness, and some people are happy in that life, and each to their own.
Yeah, no, I would do this every day, especially when I
Absolutely.
talk to people who bring a lot of value like you. So let's jump straight into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. So I guess there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about, but I wanted to talk about starting with motivation. It's something that, it's been talked about for centuries,
Absolutely.
decades. Everyone has a different view on it. Probably over talked.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like it can be a cheap currency when people talk too much about it and not actually do it or
Absolutely.
live it. I was wondering what your take is on motivation. How do you see it? How do you develop it? Is it something you're born with? Is it something that you can actually learn from others?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of facets and layers
Yep.
to that question. And I think one of the most important things I've found over the years, what you learn can form that in a sense, or set a standard
Yep.
that you can then obviously layer up from or level up from.
Yep.
And that allows you to get the most out of anything that you want to do in your life. But if you don't know what that looks like, if you don't know, you don't know. It's one of my old favourite sayings. And that means a lot of the times if we wanted to be a millionaire and we didn't know what that looked like, but we got the advice to allow ourselves to level up, then we can obviously take the steps to do that.
Yep.
And I think that's the biggest thing. The motivation has to come from a purpose, a vision, and a why. And that motivation, purpose, vision, and why needs to come from the individual and what they want to achieve out of their life, determined by their success on the back end of their happiness. And when they find that, they can go to a whole new level. And I think a lot of people now have become motivational on social media, I suppose. And as you touched on, I think you get more value out of somebody that's been through something that allows you to see that no matter how deep you may feel that you've been in your life, or how much trauma you've suffered, or pain or suffering in general, you can achieve anything you want to based around what's out there. And I think you can grasp that motivation from the individual and sponge it up how you sort of pleased to do so. And that's the beauty of life. We're all designed differently, and how we take on that information will be determined by your upbringing, the whole lot, and then putting that together to allow you to get your own motivation out of whatever's been passed on, but on the back end of your own vision, purpose, and why as well.
So I heard this quote, not word for word, but it was like, motivation is like having a shower. You gotta do it every day, right?
Absolutely.
So So when you look at motivation quotes, you watch someone's motivation video, you watch, you go to like an event or listen to Jeff.
Thanks, mate.
It's almost like a pump or a boost you get.
Absolutely.
Those video games back in the day, the fighting games, like, that you can see the fighters like taking like, the energy of the fighter,
Yeah,
and like something happens, you get a little boost and then it dies again.
I love it. A couple of good kicks and you get the boost, and
That's it.
Priceless.
It's that's probably, to me, that's how I see it. But there's got to be something that is fundamental,
Yep.
that puts you on a high level, like changes your base level,
Absolutely.
long term, and not be something you have to. So for example, if my motivation level, if we were to come up with a scale, is like starting at a 50%.
Yep.
I meet Jeff today and we have an awesome conversation, and you motivate me, you tell me a few things that really inspire me. I go up to 70.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Someone else could be at 30. That's the base level, right? And they might go to a 40 or a 50 and drop back. What are the things that can raise the base level to a high level?
The biggest thing, we already touched on it, the vision, purpose, and why to that individual is the first thing. If they don't have that, their motivation, when they wake up, they have to try and reach out and find inspiration from somebody else, whether it's me or whoever it may be on social media, that they then seek to get that inspiration for their own motivation. And I think one of the biggest things is when you know your own why, you wake up with intent, with purpose around every single decision that you make on every single day. And once you do that, no matter what happens at that point in time, it starts to become a habit and ritual, which then becomes momentum until you don't think about it. It becomes a level that you can sustain and maintain for the rest of your life. One of the biggest things out of that is how many layers can you keep adding to that by going in and finding the inspiration behind different stories and what you're sponging up and how you perceive that to then construct your own narrative moving forward. And once that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times what people are doing, they're going for that inspiration without sponging anything up. Every single morning they have no why, so they're waking up. Oh, what's Jeff said today? Oh, great! I'm gonna go out and do a training session, or I'm gonna go out and start a business.
Yep.
But you need to do more than that. You have to find your own why you want to start a business, why you want to start training, and then that every single morning. Let's say it was around the training principles or things. You're getting up because you want to improve your health because your father had died from a heart attack, as an example. I don't want to be, or your whole family's had that sort of history of a heart attack, so you don't want to fall in the same line of. Therefore, every single day I'm going to wake up with purpose and intent to improve my health around the actions I've taken. And if something happens on a hereditary level, then I can't stop that, but I'm going to do it all in my power to be all I can be, and that's where the magic happens.
That's really awesome. So with the why, do you believe that there's certain things that are certain categories of why that are more powerful? So for example, if my why is about, and maybe that's not a why, but if my why is about making more money, right? If my why is very much about me, rather than, for example, some other people's why could be helping others, or helping the community, or doing things that are not necessarily focused on them.
Absolutely.
Do you think in the categories of why there are things that are more powerful than others, or it's just a matter of what's inspirational or motivational for you?
I think the intrinsic side of things, in the sense of doing it for you, and everything that you want out of your happiness, your success, and your quality of life. I use those 3 pillars for everything. When I go into any form of interaction with a person, whether it's on a business, a conversation, or a relationship level, I'm constantly looking and guiding myself by what success, what happiness, and how does this improve my quality of life. And once you do that, and you're able to look at those 3 factors, then say this is a positive coming into my life, and it's going to add that extra layer we've spoken about. then there's an easy answer for myself. I don't have to think about it. A little principle I live by, and it's a good one. And you can apply this into your life in a different level. But years ago when I was a young kid, I used to have this thing. You walk into a shop and you grab a shirt, and if I say, hey, do you reckon I should buy this shirt? Then I've already doubted myself. If I walk in and say, I'm buying this shirt, walk up to the counter, drop the money on the actual clothing item, then I was certain about my own vision about what I wanted. So I knew what I wanted from that point in time. And I use that same principle with any relationship I go into now around those 3 pillars. How will it improve my success? But maybe I can help them level up as well, because that's what good relationships are about. And the biggest thing, a lot of people think, oh, you know what, I'll grab as much as I can from that person and I'll leave them behind. But down the track, that person then goes to a whole new level. And they're like, oh, remember me? And they're like, mate, last time I gave you the opportunity, you pretty much threw it up against the wall. And not only that, you forgot who I was.
Yeah.
And that just you want people that bring good vibe, good energy. And we were just talking about that with the music before this. The energy of the music or the energy of any relationship will either lift you up or tear you down. And I think that's the biggest thing people need to understand. Find it intrinsically for yourself around your own why. And you'll wake up, people say, how do you have that much energy constantly? Because I have intent and purpose behind every single thing that I do in my life. And I relate this to the female side of things, and maybe on the guy side of things, I'll give an example as well. But females, they get their hair done. Say they're going out this weekend for a Christmas party, get their hair done, their nails done, buy a new dress, buy some new heels. How good do they feel, right? And we know that as males, and no doubt the females that listen to this as well will understand that exact conversation I've just had. Now, if I'm doing the same thing around everything that I do in my life, whether it's a business or personal level, and my life's going to be one hell of a life on a level of success, happiness, and quality of life. And that's only going to improve my mental health and drive to get up every single day to be better than I was the day before.
Was it easy for you to find your why, or did it take you? So the process of finding your why, was it a long process for you? And is it a long process for other people that you've come across? Or because sometimes maybe someone just wakes up one day and like, shit, okay, this is my why.
Absolutely.
I'm super clear about it. It's
Absolutely.
never been clear. And for some people, it's not something that just comes up overnight. Like, it takes time, thinking, experiences, meeting other people to crystallize, for you. So
I think for me, growing up where I did, and for those that don't know and haven't seen the last podcast, it was a rough area, notorious for the wrong reasons, and to be able to then see the health issues, see the drug and alcohol, domestic violence, crime, etc., and say, hey, people would look at me and say, you'll never amount to anything coming from that area. That drove me. But then there was so many different layers, my parents having cancer, so wanting to help people in that sort of time of need, and then the appreciation for life. So I was taking all these different lessons, my brother and sister's suicides, appreciate every single moment in life, make sure we do reach out to our family or friends, or even those that connect with on social media, because maybe they're connecting just for that interaction to allow them to save or maybe even change their life. And for me, it was probably a long thing, but there was context and layers being built over a period of time. Some people have, their partner, their parents have a sudden heart attack, drop dead, and they realize if they keep going down the path of eating the way they are, or their lifestyle that they're living, an unhealthy one, as an example, they'll end up in the same position, and they trigger and they go, you know what, I'm joining the gym, I'm going to eat healthy, and they change who they are and who they become. And until people have that snap point, what I call a snap point in their life, and it triggers them to take action, to create a positive reaction, they'll always go down the path of their own habits and rituals, what's implanted in their neurological pathways, or their automated responses around particular situations. And if they get hungry or stressed, maybe it's eating McDonald's as the example, or whatever destructive sort of behaviors that they got sort of in their set system. So until they change their mindset of their set mind, they'll always be the same person that they've always been.
Interesting. What drives? So what drove you back in the day was a lot of people telling you you're not going to amount to anything. that was one thing you heard over and over as a kid,
Absolutely.
and that just created this volcano inside of you, right? That just one day kind of erupted, right?
Absolutely.
Do you think that other people telling you or anyone, hey, you can't do something, do you think that's something that is a huge sort of potential for, you know, driving you forward? Or is that something that, you know, some people, they just get told, no, you can't, you won't be able to do anything? And because we hear about all these success stories, and a lot of them, they always say, you know, when I was a kid, I used to get either bullied or told all these things, right? But then my assumption is a lot of people also get told all these things and they just accept it, and it just becomes part of them.
Absolutely.
So what's that thing that allows you to change, like transfer that, all that negativity and naysaying to this volcano?
I think just going back on the last question before too, if you think about my original intent to show people and prove people that I could be more than they thought I'd be, that was my motivation back then. But now, and in this point of time in life, I got to a point I don't feel like I need to impress anybody, and I'm not here for anybody but myself. And if I live in my own happiness, then I'll live a happy life. And I won't be counting every second, but making every second count. And when you do that over and over and over, that becomes a part of your own hard wiring. And that's the biggest thing. A lot of people, unfortunately, get stuck in that hard wiring for a long period of time. And if you have that snap point and it triggers you to join the gym or start a business or whatever it may be, you know, you're broke and you're in debt for $50,000 as the example, and you're like, you know, you've gone through a lot of trauma. Maybe you've had someone pass on, you've lost your partner during that period as well, and all of a sudden you're in the depths of depression, sadness, anxiety, and everything else that comes with it. Until you are able to hit that snap point and then start to restructure who you are, unplant the plant that you've put in before and replant something new to allow yourself to grow and prosper, you will struggle for a long period of time. And the best way to do that is understand that if you're not happy in your life right now, and this is a big message for everyone that watches this, a lot of people won't listen to the advice they're given because they're so comfortable, even in a traumatic situation. And I've seen this over years of my life, even with people in a domestic violence situation where they're constantly being hit, but they know how to deal with it. And they go, you know what, I'm happy and comfortable. I wouldn't say they're happy, but I know how to deal with it, because why would they stick around for so long, right? And I don't mean this in a bad way towards those that have suffered or endured that, but I also understand that a lot of people just get so used to this is normal behavior, I can deal with this, and years and years and years of abuse go on because they just stay in this relationship. Please do yourself a favor, sit, pause, and say to yourself, is it a positive or negative? And if it's a negative, what's the next step in the solution to create a better outcome for yourself? If that, in the situation I just gave the example of, means cutting off the partner and letting go, because if someone's not willing to change, external of your happiness, and as I said, live in your own happiness and your vibe will attract your tribe, then move on. And I do that very regularly, even if that means leaving behind friends that you've had for years. And when I say leave behind, I don't mean just dump them. You didn't build a relationship for nothing, but understand sometimes your journey and their journey is just two different roads, and you can respect what they're doing, but they got to also respect yours. And that means that the time that you may have spent together starts to separate, and it's not as often as it used to be.
I think when you talk about domestic violence, you know, it's a form of abuse, right? And abuse is everywhere, and I see it as shades of grey. It's, you know, there's different levels. It could be some level of abuse at work, you know, in school, whatever, at home, anywhere. And obviously, I'm not an expert on that, but in my mind, I see that a lot of times people who accept abuse, regardless of the form, are uncomfortable and fearful of making decisions because they're afraid of the when I say consequences, I'm not talking about your partner's abusing you. So if you walk away, something else that's worse is going to happen. It's about like, okay, leaving what I have now, the fear of making a drastic decision, of what will my life look without it might be worse. Like that uncertainty.
Absolutely.
Okay, so for me, that's the first component. I think the second one is about self-worth. A lot of the times, you not knowing that your worth is a lot more, or just having a low self-worth and self-esteem can allow you to can result in you accepting abuse, and that becomes a recurring theme in your life.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like it's a combination of both.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you teach people how to treat you by what you accept, and I don't mean that I understand definitely, because I've been around it quite a lot, and I totally understand. I think you touched on some important points there, where on a personal level, seeing and being a part of that environment, it's the fear of the unknown, and even external of that. Well, that's on a sporting field, walking out, you're playing New South Wales versus Queensland. For those that, may watch this overseas, it's a big rivalry. They get in and they literally tear each other apart. They probably walk out on that field and go, the nerves that would be going inside the body, no matter how high an athlete you are, you have to understand that they're going out to battle, they're going out to war. And I think the same mentality is, you just got to do it. You got to step onto the field and give it all that you got. And that means stepping out of the relationship that you're in, not just on a domestic violence level, on a business level, team. I've been in teams where the coach has got the best out of me versus a team that's really impacted a lot of players because of the way the coach has dealt with them. And I know that for me personally, I'd step away from that team as quickly as possible, because I do want to get the best out of myself, and I want a coach that can, as we've spoken about earlier, teach me things that I didn't know before, so I level up, and where to stand, how to run, where to be for a pass, or whatever it may be, as an example. And until we do that and open ourselves to the fear of that unknown and step onto that arena, we'll always be in the same position with those self-limiting behaviours, thoughts and beliefs that hold us back. And I spoke about this before, I'm pretty sure, in the last podcast, of that invisible backpack. What you carry will hold you back forever. If whether you were bullied as a kid, whether you've had trauma as a kid, and that sits in your backpack and creates this belief around different things. And I've heard so many stories over my interaction as a health and wellbeing consultant, and the interactions we have during the workshops are about the individual high performance in their life, so that the outcomes, whether it's on a community, organisation or business level, go to a whole new level. Every component of the car as such, this being a person, is performing at its best. To do that, we need to unpack that invisible backpack and make sure we identify every single thing that they've been through to allow them to move forward with total clarity. And until you do that, it'll be just something that weighs you down in this beautiful thing we call life. And everyone deserves happiness and success.
Words of wisdom, my friend. Thank you. That was I kind of got lost in the moment hearing that stuff. Awesome. I certainly agree with everything that you said. I think you also gotta just break the cycle.
Absolutely.
Like whether it's a negative energy that you're getting from people around you, if that means that you have to leave someone behind, or bring in other people to kind of replace the toxic people in your life or the environment that you're in. You just got to break the cycle, and it doesn't have to be like drastic decisions all of a sudden. Maybe it's just little steps, obviously depending on what circumstances you're in, right?
Yeah, and there's so many layers to all of these questions. So if someone comes at us, like, you got to understand we're doing our best to answer them as deep as we can, but the context of being able to break that cycle means that you have to step into that arena, step onto the field, tackle your fears, have no limits, say yes to everything, and walk out with your legs shaking, your hands trembling. Mate, think about the talks that I've done over the years, and I walk out on that stage, a young kid that grew up in an area where no one was going to make anything of themselves, and have 1,000 people, business leaders, listen to myself as an example around how to create high performance habits and rituals. And sometimes for me, even, I walk out and go,
Was it intimidating?
100%, absolutely. Because you got to remember, I got to remove what I've been taught in my head that you'll never amount to anything. So I'm now in front of who technically I feel is at a different level of around a high performance level, corporate level, CEOs, etc., that I'm now saying, hey, this is how you perform at a high level. And they're like, who are you? And so for me to be able to say and deliver that with confidence, I have to perform that one myself, so I know exactly what I'm talking about, and any questions that come around it, I'm able to answer that. But to give them actual outcomes, solutions that they just are blown away by, that are laterally or lateral thinking around a solution that no one's ever given them before. And once I do that, people just blown away. And I've had so many people. I remember I went to one. They said, "Look, don't be disappointed that the CEO's not the biggest fan of public speakers." And I was like, he had a whole heap for this day. And when I come off stage, mate, he come up, shook my hand. He goes, "Mate, that was the best thing I've ever had. Because not only did you just speak about it, but you gave us tools during it, and you actually helped each individual apply it through a task." And that just then sticks in the individual's mind around how they can change themselves to get the most out of the whole organisation. He was just blown away by it. And I think that's the biggest thing. Instead of coming in with that just inspiration, what is your own motivation to your own life? And once you make that person perform at their own level around their own happiness, the success will come for that organisation or business or community or individual. And on the back end of that, their mental health quality of life improves, and everyone deserves that life.
Everyone definitely deserves a great life. So, a topic that is quite interesting, not the easiest to talk about, has been sort of becoming the elephant in the room in our culture today, mental health. And I want to probably focus on men, so men's mental health. Let's just start really high level. Yeah, and then we'll dive in. Let's just start really high level.
I love it.
What's happening there, man? What are you seeing? What's been happening in men's mental health? We can talk about Australia, but I guess it kind of like stems over to any part of the world. But I guess because most of the people that you work with are here in Australia, what are you seeing? What's the state of men's mental health in Australia? What's deterring it? What's helping it improve?
I think you got to go back in time, and the values set by males back then. Men would work, women would stay at home, and we'd pay the bills and so forth. We were very proud and strong, and don't cry, only girls cry was the mentality. And I think when you look back on the invisible backpack, and one trauma happens to that individual, next trauma happens to that individual, something else is told to that individual, and they keep holding it in until they absolutely explode. And I've been in that position where there's been a lot of mental health, mental stress guided towards myself. And it's almost like, you've got this lion in a cage and you've got this prod and you're poking the lion and then you stick your hand in to pat the lion. What do you reckon the lion's going to do? I'm pretty sure the lion's going to bite your hand off, right? Or try and rip you into the cage. And that's because we hold it in for so long. And it creates this, I think with social media now, putting another layer in context to that expectation of who we need to be, and sometimes whether that's being too proud. I think it takes a strong man to be a leader, to stand up and say, hey, this is how I'm going to conduct myself, and whether I show my emotions, I don't care what anyone thinks of me, I'm strong and I'm proud of who I am. And when we do that, then we let go of that feeling of, hey, no, you've got to hold back and not show any emotion. We can't express it, nor can we deal with the trauma that we're currently going on inside. And we know that the suicide rates have gone up. We know that men are suffering hugely from the inside out. I also think, and there's a huge context to this too, are a lot around husbands and wives, or relationships in general, and the breakup of those, especially when it revolves around kids. And one thing I'd love to pass on in this is how we conduct ourselves will be how we role model the next person. And whether that's your friends, your family, your workmates, but more importantly, your kids. And I think a little pass on to everyone that does watch this. If you have gone through a breakup and you do have kids to one another, the best outcomes for the kids is that you get on and role model yourselves around that kid and what you two want to carry on about, because of whatever's happened to cause the separation of that relationship should have nothing to do with the kids, because the kids just need a role model to then, during those formative years, create good habits and rituals around life skills that allow them to then be all that they can be. And similar, and once you keep doing this to this, and I mean this, it could be both sides doing it to one another. I'm not blaming anybody. It puts the male into a position, I know from a male perspective, talking to a lot of guys and even females, into a position where we're physical, they're emotional. Females are emotional. So they get this big eruption of volcanic internal disruption, I suppose, but they can't deal with it. And their way of dealing with it is leaving this planet. And it's, for me, that's one of the saddest things, because those kids lose their parents, one of their parents. And I think if we can find a level that we push differences aside, let's say it was cheating as the example, and say, we'll deal with that on a different level, just us two, but what we're going to do with our kids has nothing to do with how much we may feel or think about one another. And when we do that, then we start to allow good relationships to build from there, and we don't have so much stress on the male population. That has a layered foundation, because they'll take that to work, and then we take on, let's say I was that person, and then you take on my stress as well as a friend and trying to help me. That then puts, some load onto your life that you didn't need. And I think if we can then deal with things in a different manner, be civil, mature about it, we can take away a lot of stress from the male population.
Do you think that there's certain things? So here's an idea, right? And I'm not saying I'm strongly behind it, but here's a thought. If you look at how we've evolved as humans and come this far, 2020, that'll be 2021. Yep. Thank God.
Well, let's talk about that at the end of next year and see where the aliens land.
That's it. But if you look at men, we, excuse me, we're more individualistic, I believe, than females. I feel females are more collective, by virtue of who we were back in the day, hunters, right? And the lead of the tribe. It was all about, okay, for a man to be able to pass his genes, it was about being the most powerful person in the room. And so men, I feel like, are hardwired to focus on themselves and kind of like trying to beat others around them to rise. And I'm not knocking on men. I'm a man, and I feel like, we've done great things as well. But when you kind of look at the makeup and you try to see, is there anything behind it from an evolution standpoint, maybe? I feel like that's part of us. You're individualistic, whereas females are more collective, sit down and help each other. And I think in this day and age, as a man, you're not told from a social perspective that if you were to ask for help, that's okay. Yeah, right?
Correct.
And you have this ego thing, like, I do not want to expose my vulnerability.
Absolutely.
I want to do it on my own. That's a thing that's super big when it comes to the male population.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on it, the ego and the idea of the male. testosterone, chest proud or chest out, and I'm strong and hear me roar, versus the nurturing side of things. And I think the nurturing side of things allows, and you think about who brings us up. It's the mother, right? And that mother brings together the family. In the same situation, a female brings together another group of females, and they tend to help one another. And the example behind a lot of makeup and hair and so forth, versus the males probably never ever sharing something like that as an example, and it's because it's the old ego gets in the way and chest is out and I know what I'm doing. And you look at a conference, a lot of the questions, I shouldn't say this because I do get a lot of questions from both sides, but in general, the questions are different in regard to I don't want to look stupid versus I don't care how I look on the female side. I'm going to ask the question. So the questions on the male side are very focused around not making myself look stupid, but I'll gear it another way. And when you look at it in context, it's the same question, but they, because of the ego and the ID, I'm not going to show them that I'm weak or I'm not going to drop my guard for that moment. When we can do that and we can allow ourselves to be all that we want to be, taking us back to that same principle of letting go of who we are, or the perception of who we should be. Especially as a male growing up, tough, strong, with the ego's there. Let the guard down and allow yourself to interact with others and allow yourself to be real as to who you are. I think that's one of the biggest things in this society these days. We try to perceive or throw out a perception of who we want to be seen as, rather than just being you. Be you, do you, and whoever ends up by your side's meant to be there, and whoever doesn't, as much as it may hurt your ego, if you can drop that and push that ego aside, mate, you only grow and prosper from that, because you say, you know what, that wasn't who was meant to be in my life for whatever reason. And what were the lessons I learned from that individual while they were in my life? And sometimes that, it might even be someone of value to yourself, who you wanted to be a guidance towards the direction that you're heading, but for whatever reason the relationship broke down because of differences. And when I say differences, we're all built different, and we have to not take things personally when someone has a different sort of, not set value, moral and belief, but more a set standard that just sees us drift apart at some point in time. Sometimes people don't even know why, but it's just because of, this person's on this journey and you're on this journey, and it just doesn't align. And don't overthink it too much and let it go, but allow yourself to be you. Do you, and I promise you, you'll lose people on your journey, even best friends. I've lost them, and not because I've done something wrong to them, but it's just they want to live a particular way of life, which I want them to do that versus what I want to do. And I drop the ego and I let my emotions come out, and I do that quite a lot on social media in hope that men let their guard down and are able to deal and grasp the support that they do have. A lot of the times after suicides, we see, an outpouring of messages, oh my God, I can't believe so-and-so's gone, because they just didn't realize that they had so much a support network. And if we let our guard down instead of puffing our chest, it may actually save our lives.
Interesting. But do you feel like the problem is coming from, one of the things that is putting a lot of pressure on men is, from a young age, somehow, in some shape or form, you're told that your success in life is, in a way, based on how tough you are, right?
Absolutely.
So you have to be tough, and to be tough, sometimes you got to act tough. So it's like, if you boil it down, it will come down to the fact that it's all about being an eligible partner one day, right? Like it's all about like being attractive, right? And being attractive leads to you being chosen by the other sex, and passing on your genes. I'm not trying to go too biological or technical here, but I feel like it comes down to what we're saying is attractive and what is not. And so if we're saying this is what's going to make you attractive in the eyes of society and the other gender or whoever, like if you're attracted to the same gender, whatever, but that sort of idea, that sort of picture that we paint to tell men this is what you got to be like, I feel like that is what starts the journey of that pressure that we put on them.
I grew up in that neighbourhood where you had to be tough, like really tough, and learning how to fight, knowing how to stand up for yourself taught me some good values around always stand up for what's right. And over the years, as I matured, I was able to then stand up for what was right, but then teach the lesson as to why to the individual and put it in a way that wasn't saying, hey, unless it's my way, it's the highway. It's more about showing them so they could then empathise or understand from a totally different level that they've never seen before. And that, for me, I had to keep that perceived person going for a long time and trying to keep the image of who I was versus who I now am was a relief. I let go of that person. I let go of the ego, and that's probably the message in the question before, the one before that. Let your guard down. Let your ego go. In the gym is the example. When I was a trainer, train your muscles, not your ego, meaning you're not throwing up the weights because you're going to hurt yourself. The same principle applies in life. You're not doing things because you want people to perceive you a particular way, but when you walk away, you cry alone at night. And I know that happens because my mates tell me that. And I think once you let that guard down, that ego down, that perception of who you need to be, wearing a particular brand, driving a particular car, being strong amongst the boys, playing football as an example in Australia, you can still be
There's nothing wrong with playing table tennis.
Absolutely, and you could be a strong man.
I used to play table tennis.
quite clearly, huh? But like you think like that. That's the thing. If you're making, and we spoke about this before, when you become a leader for you, that's the most. What is important to yourself? That success, happiness, and quality of life look like. And when you stand up for those values for yourself, whatever they are set at. Like I said, success doesn't have to be $1 million house. Success might be being able to wake up and walk your dog every morning on that beach, and I use that as an example every day. But knowing your bank account's ticking over with just enough money so you can survive comfortably, someone might perceive that as their own success. But when you live within those values and you drop that ego, you don't need the car, you don't need the branded clothes. And if that is what you so desire and your goals are set at that thing and you are ticking off those boxes, my question to you is, why are you doing it? Like, what's the purpose for yourself? Is it going to increase or improve your happiness? Do you feel that you're going to live a better quality of life from those actions? And if the answer is yes, go for gold. It's your life. If you're not living it around your own happiness, and you're trying to please others, you'll never find happiness. You'll always chase something that's unattainable. And I think that then creates hurt within inside. I hear so many friends that have got so much money, ridiculous money, and they don't know how to be happy with that money. And because they don't even know what their happiness looks like. So the first thing I ask them is, what's your happiness look like? And the answer I always get, they go, and yet they've got millions of dollars in their account. Think about that. The answer could be a Lamborghini as an example, but they're not even giving me a direct, clear answer because they haven't paused for a moment other than the fact that, hey, I'm going to make millions of dollars, but why am I going to do it? What's the purpose behind it for you as an individual? Otherwise, they're going to just keep making millions of dollars for how many years until they die?
Yeah, here's the thing. So when it comes to material, whether it's making money, buying things, all that stuff, I'm all for it.
Yep.
And I work hard because I want to make more money.
And I'm all for it too.
But the reason I think, here's my view as to why it doesn't make you happy. It's because it is not a constant thing. It's not a state of being. You're not, so like, let's say you set a goal and you think, if I make this amount of money, I'm going to be happy. Right?
Absolutely.
Making that amount of money or buying that car or, dating that person or buying that watch, whatever, is actually in the scheme of things is a very tiny like portion of time, right?
Absolutely.
It just happens like that. You go get it, you got it, boom, you're enjoying it, you're driving the car,
Absolutely.
and then 2-3 days later, that high just comes down, right? So it's not something that is inherent.
Absolutely.
Like you touched on that in the start of this episode. It's not intrinsic. It's not something that you live with every day.
Yep.
So I'm all for it, and I think it's part of who we are to want to have nice things in life, right?
Absolutely.
But it's not what really drives happiness. So
on that subject, I think for me, I came from where I came from, so I valued the simple things early on, and that became my baseline of my happiness. So when I got an extra layer, whether it was I bought a nice car or got a house, and now I'm in a financially really strong position as the example, it's only bonuses or added value to it. And if I choose to buy a nice car or top or whatever it may be, beautiful, but I don't need it because I'm already happy. But I add those levels too. And before anyone sits there and says, oh, that's crazy because if you had millions of dollars, it's the way that you operate. So some people just grind over 60 years and won't go on one holiday as the example. Now, what are you doing it for? Just to say that you can show who your bank account, because it's that mentality isn't going to create that better reality for yourself. And I think once you start to realize, hey, what am I actually doing it for? What's my happiness look like? You know, is that going out on a yacht every weekend and celebrating with 20, I don't know, models in your eyes on Sydney Harbour, cracking champagne? Go for gold. Like, I'm not saying that nothing's wrong with anything around your perception of your own happiness. Just make sure you're ticking off your boxes around what that looks like. So is it a Ferrari in a garage? Is it a $10 million house? But if you don't know what that looks like, and you're just doing it for the pay packet, I promise you, a lot of people tend to get to the end of their life and they regret the things that they haven't done. Yeah. And that's the concept behind that sort of answer I've just given you.
You touched on something really important, which is working all your life to only wake up one day thinking, oh, you know what, like, why did I work all my life? I totally agree with that. There's a flip side. See that man in the middle, Elon Musk? He does not go on a holiday at all. And he's got to be in the top 3 wealthiest, right? He doesn't care about how much money he has or his net worth. He works almost like 18 hours, 20 hours. Like at some point he didn't even sleep, I think, like maybe 2-3 hours a day.
Yes, I remember.
But because he's super driven by the things that he wants to create. And so for him, this is happiness. And some people say, oh, I've seen a few podcasts and a few, people saying, oh, maybe Elon is not happy. I think he is. I don't know, but I think he is, because he's doing something, he's doing a lot of things that he's super passionate about. And he believes are the most important things to do in life. So if he's spending every hour of his day doing something that he thinks is the most important thing in life and his calling, you've got to be happy if you're doing that.
You follow your passion, you'll find your happiness. And I know that he's happy. Yeah. Based on the conversations I've seen, the podcasts he's been in, I wake up every single day and I don't work, but I make money. Yeah. And for me, it's because I follow my passion. And I'm similar to himself. There's days where I work 16-hour days. Like, I'm not even joking. This week we clocked up 3,000 kilometres, 3,000 kilometres travelling across Australia in cars to different communities, because we're delivering these projects or conversations or changes that have huge impacts, and that warms my heart. And on the flip side of that, the money comes in, but if that money came in and someone came to me and said, hey, Jeff, I will pay all your bills for the rest of your life, and how much do you think you'd need per week to survive? Or you could just come in and dip out of the bank account. I wouldn't have to go in and say, oh, I'm going to buy 10 Ferraris tomorrow and whatever else. Would I buy one? Maybe over time, who knows? But in general, I'd keep following my passion and I wouldn't stop. And when you can find that And that's that conversation around your own happiness. What's that look like? And anyone I interact with that says, hey, let's take yourself to a new level and create a business. And I go, yeah, all right, what makes money? And I'm like, don't worry about what makes money. What are you passionate about? Because if you do it around your passion, you do it for 16 hours straight and you won't think about it. And he'll wake up every day loving what he does. Hey, what about if we created this with this?
Yep.
Man, this bloke's mind would be at a whole new level around happiness. And it's a great way, it's a great thing you touch on. I think if you find your happiness, don't count the hours that you're actually working in it, because who doesn't want to be happy most of their life?
Absolutely.
It'd be crazy.
Just quickly back to mental health and social media.
Yeah.
So, because you touched on social media, curious about your take on, because I have different views on social media.
Yep.
I do believe that it has an impact.
Yep.
I don't think it's bad. When I see people clocking out of social media, and I'm like, okay, no judgment. That's for, you do you. It's not for everyone. Some people feel like super overwhelmed. Some people take time off, come back, blah, blah, blah. I just think, here's my view. It's exposed us to our weaknesses on steroids, right?
Absolutely.
So we have insecurities by default inside of us. Like, I see Jeff, strong and, living, looking great, surrounded by people that he loves and they love him, and, all these things. And then I automatically, what's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to compare.
Yeah.
Right? And that is something I would do even if social media wasn't there.
Yeah.
And the problem is social media is taking that same thing that I just described, but multiplied it by a million.
Absolutely.
So all of a sudden, if I were just to see you on the street or meet you and talk to you for 5 minutes and get to know that, oh, you're amazing, I might think in my head, I'm like, oh, why am I not like Jeff, right? But if I'm on my phone, if I'm scrolling on whatever platform and I'm seeing this guy, that person, all these people, boom, 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 boom. And if every time my mental construct is wired to always compare myself to others and always see myself coming out short, that's when you break. And so I think social media is fun. But I'd love for you to, maybe perhaps you have a different view. But I think that's the main view I have on social media. And I also want to, after you let me know your thoughts, I want to go into how social media affects men and women in different ways.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, comparison, is the mother of self disbelief. And when you think about trying to keep up with the Joneses as such, or you go onto social media with the intent of anything other than adding value to your life, you'll find what you're looking for. So we had this conversation around the Spotto and what you set your filter to. And for me, I'm on social media for the business side of things and hopefully impact people in a positive way by sharing as much knowledge as I possibly can while I'm on this planet, in hope that other people live a better quality of life with more happiness and success. And once I go onto social media, I even gear my social media towards who I follow and what they allow me to come on and see. The more I surround myself with people that are not of that nature, the more my filter starts to become of the nature of what's this bloke doing with animals today? What's this person saying about Black Lives Matter? What's the and it's not a negative, but if I constantly am trying to gear myself towards a particular direction and my focus is purely around that one direction, I'm giving 100% towards that. And soon as I turn off and I say, I'm going to just do a quick little turn off here and go in this direction for a moment and I'll come back here, I'm giving 50-50. Then I do it again and I duck off to another laneway. And all of a sudden I've split my time, 33% to each one of those. When you do that, then you start to compare yourself. Then you start to think that you're not good enough. Then if I'm only focused on the one plane or action, no matter what comes into my life, I'm only filtering and seeing what I need to see. And the same principle, I'll give you a good example of it. COVID came out, everyone went into panic, especially across the world. I don't know how other countries across the world reacted, but I know here in Australia they bought the toilet paper, which was really weird and crazy, but each to their own, right? So all the supermarkets sold out of toilet paper. But I'd look at the TV for 2 seconds. I'm not a fan of TV too much. I don't turn it on because obviously, same thing, if my filter comes from what's being thrown out from the TV, I get a set value, and that set value, that's saying, hey, coronavirus is here, people are dying, etc. It creates anxiety, stress, fear, all these things that go out and let's go buy the toilet paper. Oh no, I'm not going to go outside. Even when businesses are coming back here in Australia, because we've had low cases for a period of time, people are still freaked out, and they've now got that set value because it's been a long period of time where that become a habit and ritual thought process.
Yep.
Now, to change that, I'd turn the TV on, I'd watch the recommendations around what we needed to do to stop the spread of the virus. Whether you want to believe it's true or not, that's totally up to yourself. Each individual, each to their own, right? But what did I need to do on a personal level so I didn't impact my elders from my community? The Aboriginal community is one example, but just elders in general across Australia. I want every human to live as long as they should. And if I take an action that impacts somebody else's life, that weighed heavily on myself. So there's a little example of how the TV got into my head and said, you know what, I'll take the actions I need to take to make sure I don't impact somebody else. What were those actions? I'd watch it for 2 minutes. As soon as those actions came up, and they came up really quickly. Here's the current recommendations. Stay within 1.5 meters, etc., etc., etc. Turn the TV off. I didn't care how many people died, how many what. I shouldn't say I didn't care. I mean, as in...
You don't let it affect you.
Yeah, like because what all that was going to do was going to add layers of fear, anxiety, sort of stress. Oh, no. And that then manifests into something bigger that then becomes a habit that's literally planted into your head like a bit of software that now, even though we haven't had a, obviously in Sydney we've had an outbreak over the last couple of days, but in general, we'd had a 10-day period across the whole of the country, I think it was. There was not one COVID case yet. People were still behaving as if we had it everywhere. And I was walking around thinking, why are we freaking out? Because we've obviously got rid of it for a period of time. Let's move on from it and start to get back as a nation. And that shows you that if you allow something to be sponged up by yourself, by filtering yourself on social media towards the wrong direction, having the wrong people in your network, it will literally kill off not only any thought process you had around positivity, but start to implant a lot of negativity, and then your filter in the game of Spotto becomes nothing but sadness, depression, anxiety, stress, fear, all these negative behaviors, thoughts and beliefs.
I like that idea of filter. So let's say if you're on Instagram, who you follow, that's your filter, that's your feeds. These are people that you know that they're going to be feeding things that have a positive impact or a negative impact, so you take them out, etc. But also, like for me, the lesson I learned, and at some point I used to like feel I guess down and drained when I go on social media because I had the wrong mental construct. I didn't realize that I was always comparing. Looking at people doing things like, one of the biggest, like in my value system, work is very important. I have a lot of things I want to achieve in my life. So I'm always working more so than I'm going out and enjoying myself and having a proper social life.
Yep.
So when I used to see people having an amazing, like every photo, every video, blah, 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 that used to, put me down, drain me, etc. Until I changed my habit around, I didn't take social media. In fact, I'm actually on social media a lot because of, what I do for a living, like part of it is marketing and stuff. So I have to be constantly on it and understanding how algorithms work and all that stuff. But what changed was my initial reaction to everything I see. And it was, at some point, it was the, the unconscious incompetence, changing all the way to unconscious competence. So at some point, I had to put a lot of effort to changing my reaction, my mindset when I was browsing through content, to smiling and enjoying it for them, and seeing, okay, is that something I want to adopt in my life? How would that make me feel? Okay, and feeling that level of appreciation and gratitude of, if that was to be in my life right now, what would it feel? I'll be very happy. Okay, cool. And I'll enjoy it and be happy for them, and I'll have that sense of gratitude. And that started to change my energy level when I'm on social media. And I can honestly say, it's totally changed for me.
Something I do weekly, and I'd recommend to everybody out there, a weekly plan. And I know and I'm talking on a level where you write that out every single week. And the reason why I do this is because then I have total clarity, get it out, son, around the vision, purpose, and why, and the direction that I'm heading. Now, when I jump on, that filter is set to a standard where if I see something, it's not that I ignore it, but it's just not on my vision, purpose, why, direction. And I'm off that road as quickly as I got on it. And that doesn't mean that I don't value that person. It just means that we're not on that same journey.
Yep.
And I don't need to read that because it will only impact me for that moment. As soon as I split my time, I split it 50-50. And if it's something that's traumatic that's happened, look, don't get me wrong, if a friend's lost a family member, then by all means I'm going to reach out and say, hey, how can I help you? And I'm there for you. I got your back. Because I understand that. That's totally fine. But when we consume our time on somebody else's relationship as the example, and I always say this to people that are arguing, everything you want to tell me in this conversation, please don't think I'm being rude. Tell it to the person that you're having the issue with, problem, whatever you want to call it, so that you two can create a solution that allows you to find a happy medium. The best thing about relationships, or good relationships, being able to discuss something to find a happy solution and a happy medium moving forward. And don't worry about telling me, tell them. Save your energy and time. And that's how much and how deep I've looked into life by doing these weekly planners. I then also know that my happiness and my success and my quality of life is within that. Let's say it's going to the gym. Do I want to jump out on the boat like the person I have seen within my network has on the weekend? If so, where does that fit into my calendar, and how may I do that? And once you're doing that, you're living in your own happiness. If someone brings attention to me around the fact that I could get on a boat with my friends and have a great day on the harbour, that's a great thing. But if you then start to say, I wish I was out there as well, then you got to start to assess whether your priorities are actually your priorities. And that's where the magic happens as well, because once you know what your priority is, you just go, you know what, I'm happy for that person to have a great day out on the harbour, but right now that's not in my calendar, which I've done on a weekly basis. And at some point in 2 years' time, when I'm in a financially secure position, not only will I go out there, but I'll invite every single person in my network to come out on my boat, and we're all going to celebrate and have a great time as well. And that'll happen every Sunday at 12 o'clock. And then you have intent and purpose and why behind every decision that you make in your life.
There's a bit of bad news. We've got 5 or 6 topics that I really wanted to discuss.
Bring you back.
Out of time. But the good news is, that means we'll have you for a third time.
Mate, it's always...
If you would like to, at some point.
Love to.
Yeah, that was awesome, man.
Absolutely.
Time flew by so quick, this episode.
When you have fun, when you surround yourself with people that are sharing and caring and leveling you up, you won't count time.
Mate, you just hypnotized me this episode. I'm just like sitting there listening to you and like...
I absolutely hope that it's helped people take their life to a whole new level.
Remember
the 3 pillars of the lifestyle program: success, quality of life, and happiness. And you determine those.
Yeah.
Totally up to you, not me.
Yeah.
Don't think, as you said, don't compare yourself to someone else and go, Ronaldo's living in a $20 million house. Unless I get that, I've failed in life. People get a $2 million house and they're unhappy because they feel that they didn't get the $40 million house. You still did well. Yeah. It might be $200,000 house. Still great as well.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Did you want to add something?
Just quickly.
Yep.
Understand too, what I share, I own as well. And I understand that over the years, I've made choices in my life that I've learnt and grown and prospered from. So when you can let that go, this is taking you back to not only men, but females as well. We carry it around and, you make a decision in life that costs you some or causes you some trauma, stress and pain, but do yourself a massive favor. What was the lesson you learned from it? How can you prosper and grow and move forward and just own that I'm not a perfect human and no one, I don't profess to be, and no one ever will be. When we can accept that, we can move forward continuously and become that tortoise that beats the hare because we don't stop moving throughout life.
Beautiful. All right, everyone. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And check out Jeffrey Morgan, his lifestyle program. What's the site? jeffreymorgan.com.au?
Yep, JEFFREY, Morgan, MORGAN.com.au. And you'll see my bad head that will hopefully scare you into
It's a great head, man.
some action in your life.
All right. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Much love. Thanks for having me.
Anytime.